Okay, welcome back to another edition of Talking with the Elite. We are very excited for our guest today. Before we get to that, we just want to say thank you to everybody out there who's contributing to the show, everyone out there who is giving up their time and their effort, and then also, most importantly, all of you that are tuning in. We're very grateful that you're taking time out of your day, that you're making space for us. If you have anything that you would like to hear, see, please reach out to me at pintopercussion@gmail.com. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started today. We have with us today one of the elite, right? So going over this guy's resume, I know him as just like this guy, right? That lets me bum in his house once a year when I go down to DC. I had no clue I was walking and sleeping and eating at the table of someone as prestigious as this, right? Not only has he played a year with the Pittsburgh Symphony, not only has he played with Pittsburgh's River City Brass as a soloist, right? But you've got a guy who's played with the Baltimore Symphony, the Utah Symphony, the New World Symphony, the National Philharmonic, Erie, West Virginia, Richmond, Canton, and Manassas Ballet Theater. This guy is crushing it. Not only that, he's played drum set with Cello Fury, who's amazing. And I didn't even know this. This guy races cars. He's won the Grand Prix. Wait, no. Grand Prix of a... Okay, so is that like a French thing? Is that what it is? Is that just a winner? Is that the greatest winner of all the winners? A Grand Prix winner?
I think it's the Wonner prize.
Oh, okay.
Wonner pricks. That's what my trophy says.
Okay, yeah. Grand Prix winner of a snare drum competition based out of the Paris Conservatory of Music. None other than the pride of Quakertown, PA, Brandon Schantz. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess you get a resume like that when it takes you 12 years to win a job. Get to freelance a lot.
Yeah, well, no, you won a job out of school, didn't you? Didn't the stars like aligned and you were just like, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna crush it?
I will say throughout the course of my career so far, the stars have aligned when they needed to. Like when I was it was like rock bottom. Okay, we're okay. Rock bottom. Oh no, we're okay again. We're okay. So yeah, out of grad school, it was like that summer I was approached. They had an audition for the 1-year position when our teacher left the orchestra, and they needed to fill a percussion position while they had a year-long search for a timpanist. So I took that audition along with other, I don't know how many other people were there, but that was just out of grad school when I was freaking out about, well, if I don't win this, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then luckily enough, I got to do that. So that was great.
Well, and you also come from a prestigious line of classical musicians 4 generations back, right? Is that?
Yeah.
So they completely understand you going to 6 years of schooling and not having a job when you get out. Yeah.
It was tough to always explain to like my grandparents and my parents, oh, why don't they just hire you? Well, don't they like you? Well, yeah, they like you, right? You play with them on a substitute. Why don't they just hire you? And I have to say, well, it doesn't work that way.
I think that's a good hiring. Why don't they just hire you? Why don't you just go to school there?
And I say, I don't know. I think they should.
I don't know. Do you want to write them a letter? Maybe? Could you?
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, I guess if you have like 6, if you have 4 or 5 1 years in a row, maybe they should just hire you. You don't need to audition.
Hey, that's not how it works for universities, man. You get that 1-year contract for ages, decades. Yeah. No, I'm really excited to have you. So full disclosure, Brandon beat me out for pretty much every position I've ever auditioned for in my life. But we touched base first when both of us auditioned and got to go to Carnegie Mellon in 2004. And I took some time off, but Brandon stayed and was just shooting there the whole time. And you were kind of like the guy, right? I mean, you got into the program. You were the only freshman to get in. I think the next year they didn't even take anyone. or maybe like one, but like you were kind of holding down the fort there, and then you started winning all these competitions, and it was just like everything was kind of focused around you. And I've talked to a lot of grad students there, and they were like, Brandon was like the most put together, calm, amazing freshman I've ever met.
Well, I think that's because at that point, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I hadn't learned how to be unbelievably nervous playing in front of people yet. I hadn't learned that that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be terrified and shit. But no, yeah, like you said, we met then, and I don't know why. I mean, you were my like go-to. You knew what was going on. I had no idea. I would go into the studio, and I'm like, what do you mean you're not in the percussion studio? Like you're playing Musser etudes, and I'm like, how do I hold these sticks? Like, I asked one of our buddies there who's finishing up his like teaching certificate. Mm-hmm. I asked him, like, it was super late one night. I'm like, can you like get me started on playing these 4-mallet etudes? I never played 4 mallets before. And he goes, just figure it out. And I'm like, thanks. That was it. All right, I'll figure it out. So but you had it together. You were like my social. Like I needed to confide in you. Like, all right, what's this guy doing?
So why do you think you had so much success then? What was it about you that kind of put you on a level that put you on that path?
Like just to get into school there, or like just throughout?
Everything. Because if you think of, and again, I think neither of us were kind of put in this class of doing it since they've been 4 and like trained. And again, I made the joke, but your parents are not classical musicians, right? It's not like you grew up in the back hall of a symphony. So right. What was it about you that's just been so attractive to get you through these things?
I think mainly it's just support. If you have a quality support system that is going to both be supportive, obviously in the college realm, be supportive financially, as well as be supportive emotionally and like encouraging to do like this is, hey, if this is what you think and know that you want to do, we're behind you 100%. So that's a huge thing. I think as far as like the playing aspect of it, to get into school, I first took a lesson. I came out to take a lesson because I knew somebody that was a year older from my high school. She went to Carnegie Mellon for singing. Okay. She put me in touch with some, just said, call the percussion. She asked the percussion studio guys, like, what can this guy do? They said, call up and take a lesson. I went to take a lesson with Tim before the audition. Yeah. I kind of just worked on and he told me this is like, you had your lesson. I told you what to work on. You did exactly that. No more, no less. Because again, I just didn't know what I didn't know. I never played. I could do that. I had never played in an orchestra. I just loved playing music. I felt like I had a pretty natural ability to kind of be a good ensemble player, a good ear. I didn't know what I was listening to, but I had a good ear, and that could, so I think then just not coming from a musical background, but coming from a background where it was like, if you're going to do something, freaking do it. And like, just be the best at it that you can be. So, that was actually kind of a good thing too. Maybe like, because my parents did not have, my dad is an athlete. So growing up and playing sports, he knew exactly what he was talking about. It's kind of like maybe how I would picture taking music lessons from like your parent. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which can probably have it be very difficult. So them not knowing anything about music, it was more like, well, all we can do is support. Like, did you do good? I don't even know. And it's like, well, I did, I did fine. Or like they would come to drumline. So you go to the audition at school, were they like sitting out listening through the door, and then they were like, it sounded good to me, honey. Yeah, exactly. It's like when your grandparents watch you tank at your recital, and they're like, well, I just thought it was fantastic. And that's it. It's that kind of blind support that was just like, what do you need? What do you need from us? you know.
I was watching Seinfeld the other day, and he did his show on the air, and his mom was watching. He was like, "How could anybody not like him?" And I was just like,
Yeah.
"That's
So
kind of support."
having
So,
that,
so I think this is interesting because you said something that I don't think we've heard yet from a lot of people who are talking about this success level. You're saying that for you, it wasn't. I mean, we're talking about someone who, again, my 4 mallet skills, I would put them maybe a week ahead of you. So whatever you were learning, I had learned the previous week,
yeah.
you know, but you're saying it wasn't any of that. It was your attitude when you came in to take the lesson, and then your ability to take what you were taught in the lesson and actually do it rather than put your ego in front of what the teacher was saying.
Yeah, I think I came in with minimal. Oh, sorry. I think I came in with minimal bad habits,
Mm.
that I was kind of able to I recognized a relationship with Tim right away, just because I had taken some auditions at other universities and places, and there was just a connection there and a
Mm.
vibe with the other students. And, that again is not just the stars aligning at a specific time, but just like to be surrounded by the group of people we were surrounded by at that time, where you don't just have your one teacher or two teachers, you have 12 teachers because everybody's walking by the room like, no, fix that. Hey, no, that's not right. You're constantly being taught.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just an attitude of just being completely open to not knowing anything. You're just a sponge then, and you're taking in all this stuff from all these great players. And I wouldn't be where I am now without that, without you, without the other guys that were in the studio, because like you said, we were freshmen, there were 2 seniors, and the rest were grad students and post
Yeah.
grad. And that it
Yeah.
was that way until, I guess my junior year or senior year.
Yeah. When I came back.
Oh, you came
As a
back, and
freshman
then,
again.
and one of your other past guests on your show, Aaron Dowry, came.
Oh yeah, Aaron was crushing it. Oh,
Yeah.
he's a
So,
different breed.
and
So
then that was the point where I was like, oh man, if I don't win a job soon, then this guy's gonna be taking auditions. So it was like game on at that point.
So, if we talk about, because you mentioned something about this ability to kind of take in, it's not just you, and I think that's something playing alongside you. I've had the distinguished pleasure of playing next to you in the River City Brass, which was amazing. And then the feeling and the vibe of playing next to you, and then playing next to some other people who are just freaking out all the time. Like your aura kind of spreads. But then you also told a story about when you went to sub down in the DC area for the first time, and you showed up and no one knew who you were. Do you remember? I think you said you were playing like a gong part.
Yeah. So my wife and I had moved to DC from Pittsburgh before I had anything going on, like before I got my job at the Naval Academy. Then I got called. It was like only a couple weeks after we moved. I sent out 1,000 resumes just to everybody
Yeah.
in the Baltimore, DC, Virginia, Maryland, all the whole area, central Pennsylvania, anywhere I could drive to in 6 hours, I was sending resumes to.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks there, they needed somebody bailed, I guess, got sick at the Baltimore Symphony, and we were playing this Tchaikovsky piece. Can't remember now, but I was just playing a pretty involved yet delicate tam part. So I as soon as you get that first opportunity, it doesn't matter if you're playing one triangle note or you're playing a principal snare drum part, like you just study it as hard as you can, know that piece better than anybody, because you need to get called back. And there was, that was the first time I really stepped into a different professional, that top level orchestra besides
Like it
Pittsburgh.
wasn't your teacher that got you a job, or it wasn't the other players hadn't known you. This was your first time knowing them, correct?
Right. So that percussion section, I hadn't met anybody. So I go in, it was, I heard about you through this person, and then James was there to verify.
Principal
Like,
timpanist.
yeah. So it was like, yeah, this guy's fine. He'll be fine. Come in. And there was a lot of apprehension there, but I just knew that I was ready to play.
Yeah.
I knew I was confident in my abilities to just, okay, where's, Aaron talked about this. Where's the downbeat of the orchestra? Where do they play? You're just like, you're making these micro adjustments. You on the inside, it's kind of like you got to be a duck on the water. You just kind of, you're riding, you look calm, but under the surface, you're like, oh man, you're just making so many adjustments all the time to work it out. You be confident in what you're doing, but also take all the direction you're getting. Sometimes you need to take it with a grain of salt, but your job at that point is just to fit in. You have an ego that you should have left in your car, and then just fit in with that group. And then by the first rehearsal break, I think people kind of calmed down. It was like, oh yeah, okay, well, this guy can play. Okay, he knows what he's doing. Even from a small gong part. So it's important. That's important.
I think that describes you perfectly. Duck on the water, man. Like on the super even keel.
Yeah,
up here.
you've said I'm always calm about everything. That's not true. It just, if you put that out, if you just, whatever.
So, yeah, well, so here's the thing. And then I came back. You were a senior going grad school, doing all this crazy stuff, like an amazing player. You were the guy in the studio that was like, you won the snare drum competition. You had been there the longest. You kind of knew the lay of the land. And I remember I was coming back and I was in a different headspace because, I had taken time. I wasn't playing drums, and then I was at a different university. And I remember there was one, we were doing Ravel, the Waltz. We were playing that. And Brandon came up to me because I was looking, he said, Colin, word on the street is you don't know that cymbal part. Or no, you don't know that bass drum part. Doing the grad student duty of like, hey, the section's got to sound good. We got to make sure that and I was like, yeah, man, I'm pretty sure. I had a little bit of hesitant. My answer wasn't, no, I know it. I study. I was like, no, like and you were like, well, you got to learn that bass drum part, man. Like you got to be good in ensemble. And I was like, okay. Yeah, message received. And then we were up there and I studied and I did what you did. I was like, you're right. I shouldn't just take it for granted because it's a bass drum in the middle of a waltz. I'm just playing on one. So I practiced it a ton. I worked on it. And then we were up there. And all of a sudden, I knew so much more of what was going on. I was able to blend with the orchestra a lot more. And then other people in the section were screwing up, but it wasn't jumping me off, right? Like I wasn't dependent on their success for this to happen. And I remember after that rehearsal, I was walking down the stairs and you were sitting down there. I was like, hey, Brandon, how about if anybody says anything about the bass drum, they just learn their part before they start talking about me? And you just looked at me, you're like, there it is. That's the answer that you want. And I was, but it's exactly what you're saying, where you just have to learn these. And that was my thing going forward is I might not be able to outplay anyone, but I will definitely 100% know this piece back and forth where I don't even need the music. Yeah. And then if someone changes, if something happens, I can adapt and change with that. So yeah, that's really good. I like that. So you are not though in an orchestra right now, correct?
That's right. I am.
You're serving the military. You're serving the country.
I am serving our nation through music with the United States Navy, active duty. Awesome. One of 3 percussionists in the U.S. Naval Academy Band. It's one of 2 premier bands in the Navy, and one. So what does premier band mean? 11 premier bands in the military. What is premier band? There's 2 different types of bands in the military. So in the Navy, you have 2 premier bands. Okay. One is the Service Academy Band, which is at the Naval Academy. Mm-hmm. And the other one is the Navy Band in DC. It's a much larger group. And that's kind of an umbrella that covers like the Country Current Bluegrass Band, the Sea Chanters, the Concert Band, the Soldier. Is that the President's Own? The chorus. No, the President's Own is also another premier band, but that's the Marine Corps Band. Oh, okay. The President's Own Marine Band. And then in the Army, you have Pershing's Own. You have the Army's Service Academy Band, which is the West Point Band. Okay. And then you have the U.S. Army Field Band, which is the Army's touring band. So the difference between a premier band and, let's say, in the Navy, there's 11 fleet bands. The difference is that once you go to an audition the same way you would go to an orchestra audition or a Broadway audition or the Met audition, something like that. You hear about it, you get you send your resume, you get the audition list. Maybe you have to send a tape or something. It's all the same process up until the point where if you win, then now you're also, not only are you musically required to, like, you know, win the job from a musical standpoint, you also now have to pass the entrance processes to get into the military as an active duty soldier or sailor or airman or, you know, whatever, or Marine. So yeah, in that regard, it's, you know, musically you're required to have the same abilities. Everybody in my band, like, there's doctoral students, everybody went to like a conservatory, everybody's got the same type of training we went through, but you take that into the military. Then
So what are the odds? What are the odds that they scrap the band and you have to strap a rifle on and go overseas? Is there a chance of that?
There's always a chance of that.
There's a chance for a citizen to get drafted, right?
The chance is very small.
Okay. Is because I'm saying, like, that's what premier band means, right? Is
the type of enlistment
you're more important as a musician.
Right. The type of enlistment contract I signed is your duty to the country in this active duty capacity is to playing music. The musical component in the military is, in my setting, is basically so much more than just like an entertainment value. We do a lot of very functional music, from pass and reviews to full honors funerals to retirement ceremonies, all these different, like, very historically traditional ceremonies and different settings we play in have a really important and functional musical component. So it's not always most of the time we're not playing for the general public. We're playing to support, like, the brigade of midshipmen that are going to be the future Navy officers.
Gotcha.
And things like that. So we also do concerts, like, for the public. I mean, we do concert band and different chamber ensembles and percussion ensemble, things like that. But so that's kind of the bulk of what I do. Strap on a rope drum and do a lot of rudimental drumming out on the field. You know, it's very militaristic in that way.
That's really amazing. So that's different from the fleet, because the fleet is you have to basically, you're a member of that armed forces.
So if you're in a fleet band, you
also play, like, on the weekend or something.
Well, being in the fleet band, you're also enlisted. Like, your sole duty is to play music, but you're going to be stationed out. The difference there is you take a more generalized audition, and then the Navy, let's say I'll speak specifically to Navy. They accept you based on that, and then you're accepted into the Navy School of Music after boot camp. Whereas after I graduated boot camp, I went straight to the Naval Academy and started working, and then got promoted to the E6 pay grades, E1 through E9.
Yeah.
If you go into the fleet, you graduate boot camp. If you've been to college, you're like an E3. Then you go to the Navy School of Music, graduate from there. Then you go into the fleet bands, but you don't get that automatic promotion.
I gotcha.
And you're just like, then you're on kind of a tour of duty. So then after 3 or 4 years after your enlistment, then you might go to a different band, or you know, so it's a little bit different in that way.
What was training camp like? Was that like, what's a day you wake up, man? Is it like Gomer Pyle level stuff, or are they easy on you? How's that work?
Well, there is kind of like some of the, so again, I'll speak to this like specifically to Navy, because I didn't, you know, I'm sure it's different. It's different at Army boot camp. It's different at in the Air Force, and so it's pretty intense. It's like 9 or 10 weeks.
What? 9 or 10 weeks?
Is like a
Do you have to be on the base, or do you get to go home, or is it like?
No, you are on, like, you go through the entrance processing. Like, here, I'll give you like a quick rundown.
So you didn't see your wife for 10 weeks is what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. And I talked to her for I think 3 times on the phone for probably a total of like 15 minutes, like total.
Okay.
And you can communicate through letters that
So
you
what'd you
only
learn
get.
how to do? Yeah, what was the rundown? What'd you learn?
So yeah, you go just as you're going to basic training with everybody else that's going to basic training for the Navy. So you get put in a compartment which has roughly 50 little teeny tiny bunk beds, and then like your world is in this little drawer, and you lift up your bed, and that's where your clothes are. Everything is very meticulous. Like if you fold something the wrong way, if you are, your rack looks like crap, you didn't make your bed right, you're doing push-ups, you're on the ground, you're doing, it's very, and then it's very regimented. Like, so you wake up, they come in, flicker in the lights, scream and yell, basically you get on the tow line, and you get your stuff ready. You have like 7 minutes to brush your teeth. You better be shaved. It's just like kind of that. It's like for high school kids to like get their act together. I went into boot camp as a 31-year-old. So I was Gramps, I had jobs, I paid bills, I bought a car, I had, I know how to use a credit card, and, so for a lot of guys, it's their first time
to
ever
brush away
home.
from your gum. Brush
Yeah.
away from your gum.
If we're going to get, now I use this term, like, I don't want you to think we're getting beat, but like, that's what they would call, like, you're doing push-ups or squats or whatever, they're working you out. You're going to get beat for getting toothpaste on the mirror. Hey, dude, back up. Just back up. That was like my role as, I was Gramps. That was my name. So now, as far as
did you have to like fire weapons? Did they teach you how to do that stuff?
Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to think about it, you do a live fire. The different major training components are called evolutions.
Yeah.
You do an evolution in firing a firearm and handling a weapon. So our training only went up until you do weapons turnover, which is like, if you're watch standing, it's like the way you unload the firearm, and like you transfer it over to the next person who's standing that watch. You learn how to do that. Then you go to basically a high-tech computerized firing range where you're holding like just like an air gun essentially, but it's got like a laser on it, so that you learn how to, manipulate the firearm in a safe manner. Then from there, once you pass that, then you go to live fire where you're firing actual ammunition. Well, when I was at boot camp, we stopped there because there was an ammunition recall and like a budgeting issue. So I never got to do that part of the training. I'm still actually trying to get qualified on that because I think it would be fun. So
they're not going to send you overseas if you never pass your live firing qualification.
But it was actually like, okay, the part of being away, I missed my wife. I didn't want to be there, but the light at the end of the tunnel was always there because I knew what I was going to be doing after. I knew I was just going to go have my musical job. So what do you do on a daily
basis? Like, what's that musical job?
So it depends, because I'm at the Naval Academy, which, that's where the students go to be trained to become naval officers, whether it be a flight officer, these are the people that are going to be flying the supersonic jets and operating the submarines and making the calls, so our job revolves around supporting their activities, like on the yard at the Naval Academy. So it operates on an academic year. So this time of year, now we're not doing it now because of the pandemic. This time of year, we would be starting up our spring. We would have been starting up our spring formal parades, which is like an official pass and review for dignitaries or government officials and things like that, where the entire brigade comes out, they do their rifle demonstrations, and then they do their pass and review while we're sitting there playing. So we would be doing that. We would be doing public concerts, which our band's small. We're 34 people. So it's kind of like a River City type of size, even just a little smaller. So we do very similar music.
Oh, nice.
Like that you would play there. And then we do it's really nice because it's kind of up to us whether we want to do a percussion trio recording project or we can kind of present these things to our chain of command, and they can decide whether.
So you're saying your schedule is a little more flexible than the show up for 3-hour rehearsal concert on the weekend style.
Yeah, we have our rehearsals, but yeah, because it's academic year, we rarely have anything on weekends. It's during the days, during the weeks. We have some night engagements when the brigade has a night thing, like a lecture that we normally play at or something like that. So the breadth of what we do and the different types of settings, it really kind of, you have to be on your toes, because in the same day you might have a practice parade where you're playing, tons of rudimental snare drum on an old 17-inch rope drum, and then you're doing some more concert style playing at a rehearsal that morning for your next concert coming up. And then you have a retirement ceremony where you're playing bass drum cymbal attachment. We do a ton of that. So it's like you're always doing something different.
So when are you coming out with your rope drum method book?
There's so many method books. Nobody needs to know. I need to look at more method books. I don't need to be writing a method book.
Yeah, Brandon Schantz rope drum method book and rope drum stick.
I did pick up the there's like the fife and drumming, like it's like the Fife and Drummer's Bible book. I picked that up to start playing along with that. And that's really fun. More like old guard style, but it's really awesome.
So so just to go back, this is a good point. So you've had all these experiences. What's the most fulfilling that you've had in terms of a playing experience with the band? Like, has there been a moment where you're like, oh man, I absolutely love this. Like, I'm so glad I stuck with all this.
Yeah, I guess one would be, like before I got my job, one of the highlights of my kind of playing experiences, there's a couple, but one is definitely playing. I was fortunate enough to go on 2 tours with PSO.
Yeah.
And I played bass drum on Mahler 5, and we recorded that, but we played at the BBC proms, and that was just like, as close to as I'll probably get to a religious experience. Just sitting there during like the Adagietto, and like the place holds like 6,000 people, and it's just, you could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
And then they just like, so that, like, doing stuff like that, but then kind of on like the complete opposite side of the spectrum, one engagement we did at work that was like really powerful for me was we did Senator McCain's internment. So we did his full honors internment at the Naval Academy, which was a private ceremony. There was nobody there, but it's just like all the midshipmen in white just lining the street. And there was, just like the knowing that you're there to honor like these great American, heroes and military service people. So full honors funerals are really like, playing wise, it's not, we're playing a funeral dirge. So it's the same kind of cadence pattern.
Yeah.
So is it super challenging? Like technically, well, no, but it's just like those moments you're like, well, I'm really doing something that it really means something to the people that are there celebrating the lives of, whoever they are about to go and turn into the cemetery.
Yeah.
So it's just like those moments are like highlights. It's sad to, it's a sad setting, but just to know that you're playing a part in this like really important moment. That's
amazing.
Yeah. Those are some pretty touching moments there. And other things that are cool is like, going out marching, leading 5,000 midshipmen, 4,500 midshipmen onto like the field at the Army Navy game, stuff like that. Like that's pretty cool.
Man, sweet. I got to tell you, everybody gets a lot of flack for this stuff, or there's been hit or miss, whatever side of the spectrum you're on. I remember they were saying that at one point there was going to be some flyovers over some cities to honor people who were doing work, and people were like, oh, why are you doing that? And I was like, have you ever been to a football game when they fly the planes over the stadium? It is the coolest thing on the face of the earth. Yeah,
when you're doing like you're about to march on, and like you're getting this like loud cadence going on this cannon of a drum.
Yeah.
And everybody starts cheering, and then like the Blue Angels come and you're just like, holy crap, this is sweet.
Yeah.
The hardest part is standing
definitely
at attention, and you're not supposed to move, and then you're just trying to go like this. Because you can't see, you want to be able to see those things. But so yeah, so there's so many fulfilling things we do at
That's
work.
awesome, man.
Fun.
No, dude. Well, so I want to ask you I want to ask you one more question, and then do a quick story that I totally forgot about that you reminded me of about. I think it was the Lacrimosa that we were playing when I was doing timpani and you were playing bass drum. Do you remember that? The Favre, was it? I'll tell the story. You will 1000% remember this story.
Okay.
But before that, you auditioned, like you said, for a very long time. You had a lot of skin in the game. What was it? One time you were taking auditions while you were still in school, and I remember I was practicing. I wasn't near at the point of taking any audition or doing anything, and you're doing a mock, and I was kind of doing that grandparent thing where I was like, "Yeah, Brandon, you sound really good." And you looked at me, you're like, "Everyone knows I can't play a soft snare drum roll," and then you just like left the room, and I was like, "I didn't know that. Like, I thought it sounds really, you know what I mean?" But like, I think it was more in your head where you were just like, this is my what was the one thing that you think you had to overcome to start seeing that success at the auditions and finally break through? Or was it more than one thing? Was it, I don't know.
It was a couple things, but you're right on. I mean, it was like that, those outbursts like that, I think, happen when you just have, you reach certain plateaus and that you just can't get through, and we all live in our own heads so much, because at that point when you're in that circuit, by the time Lauren and I sat down one day, because we were trying to figure out how many auditions I took, like before you asked me that, like this was years ago, like after I got my job, and we were sitting there, we had the paper down. It's like, how many times did I audition for Detroit? For 4? I don't know. 3? No, I think
New World,
3. Yeah,
Detroit.
Like, yeah, like those account for 20 right there. No, so it was my audition for USNA band was my 34th audition.
Holy
so some people
crap.
take more, some people take, like Aaron, take 5 or whatever he took. I don't know. Yeah, that's what you want to do. People, don't do what I did. Take 5, take 1.
Just win your audition. Win your first audition.
The important part, I guess, like the helpful part of that is you got to practice auditioning. But as far as like the big thing, there's 2 things. One, getting out of my own head, trusting and reading this book. It's kind of, some places I think it's required reading, The Inner Game of Tennis, which I think has been adapted to The Inner Game of Music, but I was able to kind of relate the tennis and athletic aspect over to the musical side of things. The whole thing is about just getting out of your head, trusting the work that you've put in that little practice room, and like just let your body do what it knows how to do from all that work you've done. Because if you're sitting there thinking like, okay, Lieutenant Kiji, okay, well, my left hand's kind of shaky right now, so I'm just going to wait, and then you crap on the first thing. You're like, oh, well, I'm done. Nope. It's like, think of your audition. It's a broad spectrum thing. Get out of your own head. Trust the work you've done. You have to let yourself trust all the time you put in. And then the second thing is just do lots of mock auditions, because you have to practice auditioning. It took me a while, not really to realize that playing an audition is different than playing on stage with the group. They are 2 different things. I just never wanted them to be 2 different things. I wanted it to be like, well, no, this is how I would play it in an ensemble, so this is how I'm going to play it at the audition. And I was stubborn about that. Where in an ensemble, I think, depending on the room, I think I would play Kiji
Mezzo forte
on a 6.5-inch snare drum, honestly. Like, not to stick it to anybody, not to make a statement, but it's like, this is supposed to be like a field drum just from very far away. Like, so I'm not going to play it on a 1-inch like flat drum, but at an audition, you have to do that, because that's what everybody's using. That's what the committee is going to want to hear. That's how you can play it the softest. So it was getting past that. Again, it's like an issue of you always got to be like checking the ego at the door. And I had an ego about that. And it took a while to say, okay, I'm going to learn how to audition. But I think
Yeah.
the track that we were put on was to learn how to play in an ensemble before learning how to play an audition. Because you can run into trouble if you do it the opposite way around. If you just play auditions, then when you get to the band, you're not going to have any idea of how to fit in, and then it causes trouble. Maybe you don't get tenure or whatever. So
I don't think playing in an orchestra and behind a band, I don't think I've ever muted my snare drum ever.
right, you don't like, because you don't have to. It's a drum, you want to let it ring. It's like, I think you can overthink on the stage, but thinking about how you want to audition is important. So it's like it's letting yourself just play what you worked on, and then if things go wrong at the audition, just go back and work on that in the room, and then let yourself do it the way you practiced it the next time.
There
it's
it
just
is.
getting out of your own head.
For Brandon Schantz, practice how to audition and only know how to audition, and you'll win a job. No, I kid.
Write it down.
No, but write it down. No, that's really good. Like, even wearing the same clothes and practice walking in the room and doing everything at once, and like making that be your practice set. I think that's smart.
It's important going and setting up. Like, those things are important, but like, those are also the types of things that can get in your own head. So it's a tough thing. Auditioning is just hard, and I don't like it. I was talking to a buddy of ours, like, he does a Facebook Live thing, and we were talking about he talks a lot about auditions with other, not just percussionists, but other people. And I think he texted me, he's like, dude, you can't like hate auditions. Because I told him, I'm like, after that many auditions, I hate auditioning. Putting yourself through that is tough. For so long, and it's tough on all instruments. But he's like, you got to normalize yourself to the idea. Auditions have to become normal. That doesn't mean take 50 of them so they become normal. Practice auditioning and make it like a normal thing in your head. So and it's important to remember, like, I think we were taught this at some point, like, you're only as good as your last performance, or you're only as good as your last audition. Well, I think that's not necessarily a positive way of thinking. You can't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Well, if I mess this up, I'm worthless, nothing.
I tweak that a little bit, because I did hear that. The advice I always go by is, you're never as good as you think you are on your best day, and you're never as bad as you think you are on your worst.
Right.
And that kind of keeps me. But I remember I was down that a little. I think that's really great advice, though, to normalize that process and kind of live with it. And you're hearing it from the guy who has taken more than most percussionists combined. So I got to say this. I got to tell you this before we go. Brandon and I were playing on, I think it was a Favre Requiem. And it was when there was a massive volcano that erupted in Europe. And so the conductor of the orchestra wasn't able to be there for basically anything except the dress of the show. And so for those of you that don't know, I believe it's the Lacrimosa, this part where it's the bass drum and the timpani just doing these loud double forte quarter notes together, and 7/4. And then every 2 measures, the rest of the orchestra changes a pitch. So they're all holding out for like 14 beats, and then they change a pitch and then hold out for another 14. It's supposed to be like the impact of death in your life. And so we worked a lot on, like, we just need to lock in key. We didn't want it to be flammy. We wanted it to be powerful. What's our sound type? So we got to the point where I deferred to Brandon on bass drum because it was easier to see. I was just looking to my left, and we would just kind of look at each other on this corner of our eye, and we'd match all of our motions, our hit, all that stuff. It was great. We get to the show, we're playing it. We do the first 2 measures perfect. It sounded amazing. And then on the end of beat 7, we hear the orchestra change to the next pitch when it should have been on the downbeat of our 1. And both of us, like, our eyebrows almost went up into our hairline, and we like instantly looked over at the conductor, and there's this guy going like this, trying to do 7. He's got no clue what's going on because he was in none of the rehearsals or anything. And Brandon and I just looked back at each other, and both of us had this look of like, all right, well, from here, just play as loud as you want and do whatever you want.
Yeah, I do now remember that. Like once you said the conductor wasn't there, and that's just stuff like that is why live performance is great. It's so much fun when the gong, like if your gong strap snaps and the thing tumbles onto the ground, or the chimes break, or the mallet head goes flying. That's live performance. Like, you know, I do remember that though.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And then what was funny about it is that I think after that change, we did not hit one note together for the rest of that.
Probably not. You start panicking then. You're just like,
but you would never know it from our face because we just stared right at the conductor and just kept playing so prominently and like.
That's when again.
And my mom was just like,
calm on top, and then like this on the bottom. Because it's like you're looking at you and then the conductor, and this when's he gonna play? All these thoughts go by like at 1,000 miles an hour.
We had a buddy our freshman year. He did his concert and they were playing Nagoya Marimba, and one of them got off by a 16th note, so they were playing the same pattern, and you just heard pop 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 pa-dee, pop 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 pa-dee, right? And so then when it came to change, both of them made this 16th note adjustment. And so there was a 16th note rest, and then they kept going pop, 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 pa-dee, pop. And like everyone kind of laughed. But it was this cool thing of like, oh, we're watching that unfold. Like, is it going to happen? And they sorted it out and then got it going. So it was really cool. But yeah, man, that's totally, I like it. Duck on the water, man. Brandon Schantz coming at you from DC, the pride of Quakerstown. I'm giving it up for this guy right here.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Dude, thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me in your house when I come down to teach you rhythmics over at
I still got some more of those filet mignons. So next time.
Yeah, it looks like you haven't eaten anything in about 4 months here. So
no, that's not true. I am not in boot camp shape. No thanks to this quarantine.
So, guys, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Big thank you to Brandon Schantz for being on the program, sharing his wisdom, his advice. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out, pintopercussion@gmail.com. Hit us up in the comments below. Again, a million thanks for all the hard work and dedication that you put into this. We're very fortunate to have you playing music and doing what you do with the Navy there, man. Thank you so much, Brandon.
No problem. Beat Army.
We'll talk.